So it looks like the Ultramarines are winning big, propelled to a whole lot of tournament victories by the new Victrix Honour Guard. Let's take a look at the boys in blue, and how good players are using the shiny new toys to bring home some victories for McCrag. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Ultramarines, and in this video I thought we'd take a look at the impact of the new datasheets and particularly the Victrix Honour Guards on Ultramarine tournament lists, where in the first weekend it looks like people are doing very well with them and lots of people are struggling to deal with them. Games Workshop's certainly been doing a lot of Space Marine miniatures recently, and in particular the Ultramarines got rather lucky with a whole bunch of releases, new Calgar and Sicarius, but in particular the Victrix Honour Guard giving them a powerful melee unit, which is kind of unusual for one of the core codex chapters. On paper these guys seem really strong, and given that Ultramarines were one of the two main competitive ways to play Space Marines already and doing rather well, along with the Raven Guard Shadow Mark Talon, it did seem kind of likely that if you add a really powerful new melee unit into the mix, it was probably a recipe for the Ultramarines to rise up yet further. It does seem theory crafting has pretty much gone straight into practice, and over the past weekend it seems that not one but 3 different lists went undefeated at big grand tournaments last weekend, going 5-0 or better. And there were plenty more high placings for Space Marine armies out there, the vast majority of which were making good use of the Victrix Honour Guard. Let's talk briefly about what makes the unit strong, and then take a look through these army lists, and what good players have chosen to put on the table for the faction. I did a whole video dedicated to the Victrix Guard last week, but here's a quick reminder of their rules and abilities. It's 210 points for 6, which is by far the most common way to play them, and for that you get 6 models with OC2, and surprisingly bulky stat lines for Space Marines and Tacticus armour, 4 wounds apiece with a 2+ save, and they get a built-in -1 to wound if they're led by a character, which they always will be. They've got some great options for leader characters, the Ultramarines have got loads of captains, and 2 Calgar datasheets to choose from. The squad hits really quite hard in melee. 5 attacks apiece, hitting on a 2+ at strength 5 and damage 2. That's already quite good numbers by themselves, and you can have 1 ancient and 1 champion in the army, the ancient giving one squad a once per game damage buff, the champion having an improved profile with twin links. Then finally they also get a surge move as well. If a model gets shot dead, they can move d6 inches towards the enemy, potentially winding up in close combat, and in particular combined with things like reactive moves from Gladius or one of Sicarius' datasheets, it means that you could potentially reactive move closer to an enemy unit, so if you lose any models from shooting, you're going to be jumping straight into close combat, either near guaranteed or completely guaranteed. Basically for their points they're really quite strong, comparing pretty favourably just for the damage and defence compared with most Space Marine elites out there, and Ultramarines and the Gladius have got some great characters and special rules to back them up. For the detachments being used for these big 3 high performers, it's the Gladius Task Force or the Ultramarine variation of it. Getting Advance and Charge and Fallback and Charge are both pretty excellent for the Victrix Guard. You also get the option for a reactive move of d6 inches or 6 in tactical, that is a pretty big deal. The Lance Melee and extra AP stratagem is particularly great for them with their mass mid-strength melee profile. Armour of Contempt is great in every Space Marine detachment, and Core Gladius also adds Fights and Death, which is big for them. The trade-off between the Blade of Ultramar one is that you basically get to double down on the combat doctrines, so might spend a few less command points that way, but you lose Fights and Death for a -1 to wound stratagem, which won't be so relevant on Victrix. Getting into the scary army list that did well with them though, and first up for some victorious Victrix Guards, we've got this list by Sampar or Hannon, coming second and undefeated at a big tournament called Fantasia Fantastic with over 100 players. This one uses the slight variant on the Gladius with the Blade of Ultramar, so it has the -1 to wound stratagem, but you could potentially reuse combat doctrines like the Assault one to get those Victrix into close combat. For the Ultramarine elites here, we've got 2 sets of those Victrix Guard, one with Champion and one with Ancient. One of those squads looks like it's been joined by the Captain Sicarius datasheet, so the cheaper one with the Scout and Reactive move, and then looks like you've got options for the other one. There's Uriel Ventris and Marnius Calgar in the list with the Gravis armour and his guard. Technically all 3 of those characters could either go in the Company Heroes or Victrix Honour Guard, so I'm not 100% sure which were played there. If you did want to make some more even melee blocks though, and not just go huge investment on one, it might make more sense for Calgar to go with the Company Heroes, and then the 2 captains to go with the Victrix. Either way, it's a whole ton of scary Ultramarines melee to strap for the midboard. It seems that one of the squads will be jumping it into an Impulsor. If you gave it to the Sicarius squad, then you'd be able to scout that forward as well, which would be quite a big deal. That'd be a very early staging post for them. And then to back them up for the rest of the list, there's no less than 3 Redemptor Dreadnoughts with a Stormspeeder Hammerstrike to strip some cover, so lots of very hard-hitting plasma fire there, and they'll certainly enjoy Oath of Moment against some focus fire for their targets. Between them and the Victrix Guard, there's going to be a lot of strain on high AP weapons that you'd want to kill both them and the Ultramarines elites in the midfield. And then there's 4 board control and objective grabbing units, a combi weapon lieutenant, 5 intercessors for sticky objectives, 5 incursors that can mark targets for those redemptors, and a set of scouts as well, which could be helpful for making sure that Cato Sicarius can do his scout move. Overall pretty scary stuff, plenty of Ultramarines characters and melee fighting for the midboard, and some big guns to back them up. Before we move on, I'll just give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor in Rattle Studios. If you wanted some fancy Ultramarines painting or anything else in Warhammer 40k, they're a commission painting studio based in Kentucky in the USA. Unlike most commission studios can do everything from individual squads or miniatures, perhaps painted up to centerpiece standards, or bigger wider commissions for entire armies. Basically, the offering for them is that if you have an idea for a project or an army you'd like to see them do, you can get in touch with them for a quote on miniatures. They've got really quite a wide range of stuff they can achieve. It's always fun to take a look through the portfolio of these commission painters when I have them on. There's an all nicely airbrushed and glowy Ultramarines Repulsor Executioner there, some fun OSL on Imitate the Stormlord. I did particularly enjoy this entire Imperial Fist army that they've made. Always pretty awesome to see a tricky colour executed quite so well at scale. I'll put their price list up at the end of this segment. They have a rough guide based on the size of the miniatures and the numbers of them, often going for around $15 to $20 or so for basic infantry models, going up to more sort of $200 or so for really big vehicles like say Wraith Knights and Friends. It often tends to be a bit more economical for really big projects from these commission studios, I find. In any case, thanks to them for sponsoring the video. You can check them out, links down in the video description. For the models that most commonly seem to be leading these Victrix Guard, there's certainly a few that seem to be getting the nod more than others. Marnie's Calgar with his Gravis armour and his own Victrix Guard can make the unit into an enormous Death Star of a squad, around 400 points or so. Always being able to advance, shoot and charge is a pretty big deal for them. It can mean you get a bit more chip damage with those damage 2 shots. It's not bad to have some invulnerable saves in the units to soak up some damage, and Calgar's twin linked and damage 3 certainly helps them out a lot against targets they might struggle to kill in one shot otherwise. Beyond that, both datasheets for Captain Sicarius are pretty powerful. He gets an inbuilt reactive move of 6 inches guaranteed, which is a really big deal combined with that surge move. It means that you have options to either hide the squad or push them up to threaten the surge move into close combat. And then you have the choice either of the cheaper version with this one, which allows you to scout 6 inches forward and gain the assault keyword on your guns, both of which are pretty helpful things, or the new datasheet version with the damage 3 attacks, where you basically still get the reactive move but trade the scout keyword for boosted damage output. I'm probably more tempted by the cheaper one of the two, but they're both nice enough. Then there's also Uriel Ventris at 95 points. He's a nice fighty character with the command point debuff, which can be really quite a disruptive thing if you've got a big scary unit situated in the midboard and potentially surge moving towards the enemy. You might be able to turn off stratagems or make sure the opponent's got far fewer of them coming. You also get the option to deep strike a unit as well. Depending on the matchup, it could mean a rapid ingress delivery for one of your Victrix Guard squads or help with something shooting. For some other takes that won tournaments with the Victrix Guard list, here's a second list that won a grand tournament called Hive City Rumble, a 44-player GT, with Daniel Twitty's list with the Gladius Task Force going 5-0 undefeated. Out of any of the Ultramarine lists that have done well over the past weekend, this one was the one that spammed the Victrix Guard to the max. This one goes the whole hog with 3 sets of 6 of them, the Ancient and Champion both being concentrated in the one unit, and it seems there's no compromise on the Ultramarines Hero Hammer characters as well, every one of them being fielded besides Lieutenant Titus. Rabute Gilliman leads the way for a big melee threat in his own right, and marking multiple units for Oath of Moment. Then it looks like we've got the 3 squads led by Marnie's Calgar, Captain Sicarius, and Uriel Ventris. So you've got one enormous squad that can advance and charge all the time with Marnie's Calgar, one with the scout move and built-in reactive moves with Sicarius, and Uriel Ventris' squad with the command point debuff and the potential to make something deep strike if you want to. I wonder if in this list it might be being used on the Stern Guard veterans with Chief Librarian Tigurius. As with that unit, you basically have an enormous damage punch that can be loitering off the table and then can warp into absolutely nuke and Oath of Moment targets. The Stern Guard veterans have got some pretty solid shooting already with full rerolls to hit and wound, and Chief Librarian Tigurius has plenty of damage that really enjoy those stat buffs as well. Compared with other lists out there though, this one makes some pretty big trade-offs. Having all the fancy characters, all the Victrix Guards, and Gilliman himself means there's very little left over. Enemy armour still can't relax at range though, as there's a pair of Gladiator Lancers here. And kind of hilariously, it looks like the only concessions to cheap objective scoring units are a combi weapon lieutenant and a squad of intercessors to mark the home objective. It's certainly a massively elite and low board control style army that, while it has huge amounts of raw power, might be a bit challenging to play in terms of balancing scoring with dealing damage to the enemy. You might have to make some tough choices sometimes. Overall, seems that not too many people are spanning Victrix quite this maximally, but I guess as shown here, it can absolutely work. Then finally, for big winning Victrix Guard lists from the weekend, there's this one by Innes Wilson, taking down yet another tournament, this one going 6-0 at a tournament called Celtic Cup Grand Tournament. This one's a little bit more balanced compared with the others, though still big on the Victrix. Two sets of 6 of them here. It looks like they're being led by Marnie's Calgar in one unit and Uriel Ventris in the other. No Sicarius this time around. We've got Rabute Gilliman again to mark things hopefully for double Oath of moments. And I guess one target might often be for the shooting. There's 2 Stormspeeder Hammer Strikes here for some close range melter support and stripping cover, and then 2 Vindicators that they can spot for, potentially aided by some Incursors to allow them to all hit on a 2+. Between all those you can absolutely put the massive damage on enemy tanks and vehicles at range, and just about any other elite unit's really going to fear that sort of damage output. The Vindicators again are a big 2+ save targets that the opponent might have to choose priority between them and firing at those big chunky Victrix squads. Then beyond the tank speeders and Incursors, there's also a squad of Intercessors to mark the home objective, the usual combi weapon lieutenant, and then a captain in Gravis armor this time around, a weird but fairly common staple in Gladius lists, going solo with Artificer armor. So you basically have a weirdly chunky fighty character that's hard to take down, and still has enough damage output to wipe out some smaller squads. Besides those lists going undefeated at events, there were plenty more Ultramarines doing well. According to the 40k event tracker website, looks like Space Marines won around about a 51 to 52% win rate over the weekend, and that's pretty high for them. They often tend to be a bit diluted with lots of players going for less optimal builds, trying to make their own chapters work. For the other Ultramarines list, it looks like 7 out of the 10 ones that went 4-1 or better used Victrix Honour Guard, most lists using 2 units of them. And then for character leaders, it seems that while you could put in cheap captains, the Ultramarines prefer to go for their own variants, with Uriel Ventris either Captain or Cato Sicarius, or Gravis Calgar with his Honour Guard being used there. It seems that both versions of Cato Sicarius do get some play, depending on whether or not you want to pay the extra points for better damage output with its damage 3 attacks. Gravis Calgar made his way into literally every single Ultramarines list regardless of Victrix Honour Guard, and he was one of the ones that wasn't necessarily always leading them, sometimes looking like he was leading company heroes instead, and doesn't seem that anyone used the new Terminator Calgar datasheet. As expected, the extra 60 points for those 2 rather great Victrix Guard were well worth it. Despite the Victrix and character blocks already meaning that you're spending a lot of points on elites and characters, it does seem that the majority of lists still make room for Rabute Gilliman. In the Victrix playing list, it looks like he was present in 5 out of the 7 of them. So it does mean that these lists get super elites. Potentially he could mark the way for some heavy hitting firepower in the shooting phase, and then have his next targets be something for the Victrix to charge in the assault phase. All those mass mid-strength power weapons certainly appreciate the +1 to wound. Then beyond the main damage blocks and Calgar, most lists tend to take at least a fair chunk of Space Marine firepower. Again, the majority going for around about say 500 points or so in heavily armed fighting vehicles, things like Redemptors, Repulsor Executioners, or Gladiator Lancers perhaps. It does seem that the new Ultramarines detachment maybe isn't quite so popular though with the Blade of Ultramar. I feel like more people might have been tempted to jump on board with it, but having a guarantee to fight on death with the Victrix Guard is a really big deal if you're going to be running quite so many melee elites, so not too surprised the majority chose to go Gladius, I guess. In any case though, certainly looks like the Ultramarines are having a good time with their scary Victrix Guard with some big stats and acts of Ultramar. Let me know your thoughts on the unit and whether you've seen them in action yet. I look forward to hearing your takes down in the comments. It is early days yet of course, so maybe the enthusiasm might wear off a touch and people will get a bit more used to how you deal with them. Even with that said though, I suspect they are a unit that could probably use a bit of a points increase, far more for the bigger units than the smaller one. 210 points did just seem weirdly cheap for the unit's overall abilities. I guess we'll see whether or not that materialises for the presumed December balance update, though it's possible that it might be so close that the Victrix Guard don't have time for an update. We'll see. I'll leave that there for now though. As mentioned, thank you to Rattle Studios for sponsoring the video. There'll be links down in the video description if you want to check them out. As mentioned, if you have a Warhammer model, squad or centrepiece that you want painted up to a high level, they can help you out and work with your quotes to get something that you're happy with. That's it for this one. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. If you'd like to support the videos I make, Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well. You can find that in the video description. Channel patrons get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link's in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.